I gave this company 17 years of my life. He fired me in 7 minutes. My name is Claire Morgan, and for 17 years I was the quiet backbone of a tech empire called Halcyon Systems. It was a Thursday morning when I realized something was off. Not in the usual we've got a patch to deploy and someone forgot to QA the code kind of way, but deep tectonic shift kind of off. The office was unusually quiet. The chatter near the espresso machine had died down, and people glanced at each other like kids in a classroom where the substitute teacher had just walked in and declared new rules. The reason? Jonathan Chase. Not the Jonathan Chase who built the company. Not the founder with silver hair and kind eyes who once stayed overnight to help me reboot payroll servers during a power outage. No, this was his son, Liam Chase. He strutted in with that billionaire's son confidence, shiny Italian loafers, fitted suit a little too tight, like he was cosplaying a CEO for a magazine shoot. I watched from my desk as he made his entrance. Smiles were exchanged, handshakes offered. His voice carried across the floor, just loud enough for us to hear phrases like vision, agility, and scalability. It wasn't a surprise. Jonathan had been ill for months, maybe years, but no one expected him to quietly step back without so much as a final town hall. And no one, absolutely no one, expected Liam to be handed the reins. I remember glancing over at Malik in engineering. He mouthed, "He's the new CEO?" Like it was a joke. I didn't laugh. Something about Liam's swagger made me uneasy. The way he dismissed the longtime receptionist when she asked if he needed a security badge. The way he talked over the HR manager during introductions. It wasn't just his body language. It was the way he made eye contact like a challenge, like he was scanning the room to see who'd be the easiest to replace. And when his eyes finally landed on me, I knew. I'd been invisible to many over the years. By choice. I liked being behind the curtain, writing the architecture, making systems hum. But Liam didn't see me as invisible. He saw me as obsolete. He walked past me that morning, didn't say a word. But his smirk did. It told me everything I needed to know. Change was coming, not the kind that improves systems or empowers teams, the kind that burns everything down, just so someone else can say they rebuilt it. And I was already standing in the path of the fire. Liam Chase walked into that office like it was his birthright. Within his first week, he'd done more to disrupt than to lead. There was no grace period, no curiosity about how things actually worked, just immediate assumptions and blanket decisions. The kind only someone born rich and raised without consequences could make. He didn't ask questions. He issued statements, loud ones. The kind of declarations that made mid-level managers nod politely while secretly wondering how soon they could update their LinkedIn. His first innovation? Removing the company's flexible hours policy. "We need structure," he said in an all-hands meeting. Accountability. People do their best work when they know they're being watched. By the end of the week, employee badges stopped working before 8:30 a.m., even for engineers, who'd been on call until 3 a.m. the night before. Then came the overtime push. Liam launched something he called Operation Revamp. No one knew exactly what was being revamped, but suddenly, whole teams were expected to work late nights and weekends. "We're rebranding," he said, "and that means hustle." But hustle for what? The branding agency he hired cost more in a month than some departments made in a year. They redesigned the company logo into a minimalist blob that looked like a squashed avocado. He called it visionary. Meanwhile, we still didn't have a functioning internal comms system. The server for our benefits portal had been crashing weekly for months, but Liam didn't see those things. Infrastructure wasn't sexy. He preferred things you could slap on a presentation deck and pitch to investors. The worst came when he quietly ordered HR to eliminate the seniority equity clause in future hires. No stock options for mid-career talent. "Startups don't need dead weight," he said. I'd been called a lot of things in my life. Quiet, intense, even stubborn, but never dead weight. I sat through meetings where Liam referred to the IT department as just the help. When the head of data privacy raised a concern about security implications in one of his new SaaS integrations, Liam waved it off with, "We're moving too fast to worry about hypotheticals." It wasn't just arrogance. It was ignorance dressed up as confidence. He wanted change for the sake of change, like a kid rearranging furniture in a house he didn't build, just to say he made it better. People started walking on eggshells. No one wanted to be the next target. A few resigned quietly. One guy from DevOps started drinking in the break room. HR called it low morale. I called it what it was, rot. But I stayed. Not because I was loyal to Liam, but because the systems I built still mattered, and someone had to make sure they didn't fall apart while he played pretend king. What Liam never understood, and never tried to, was that power isn't just about the title on your business card. It's about knowing how the machine runs and who actually makes it work. He thought leadership meant pushing buttons. He had no idea that I was the one who wired the buttons in the first place, and he definitely didn't know that I'd built a few hidden ones, just in case. 17 years is a long time. It's long enough to watch 3 CFOs come and go, to survive 2 acquisitions, and to see a company grow from 20 employees sharing 1 bathroom to a multinational operation with satellite offices across 5 countries. But for me, those 17 years weren't measured in promotions or titles. They were measured in uptime. I was the one they called at 2 a.m. when payroll systems froze before a national holiday. I was the one who caught the breach attempt during Christmas Eve. I was the one who rebuilt the core data infrastructure after a contractor mistakenly deleted our staging environment. And I didn't complain. Not once. I liked being the person behind the curtain. Let others take the credit in meetings. Let the VP of operations shake hands at conferences. I preferred servers over speeches. And yet, for all that silence, for all that quiet loyalty, what stood out most was one summer that no one but me remembered. Or maybe one person did. Liam. He was 21 back then. An intern, though he insisted on calling himself strategic assistant to the CEO. Jonathan, his father, brought him in during the final phase of a major platform migration. A delicate, months-long operation requiring precision, timing, and airtight protocols. We were days away from going live with our new client interface, something our largest partners had been promised for over a year. I had scheduled a sandbox update that Friday, meant for testing only. But Liam, eager to prove himself, logged into the production server instead. Thought he could fix a permissions bug he overheard someone mention in the break room. He didn't fix anything. He deleted 3 user authentication libraries, wiped admin access to internal dashboards, and accidentally locked our 2 biggest clients out of the system on a payday Friday. The whole thing went dark in under 90 seconds. No one knew who did it at first. Panic spread. We thought it was a hack. But I knew. I checked the logs. It was Liam's credentials. He'd used Jonathan's temporary override key, something I'd flagged for deactivation weeks prior, but HR had delayed it for onboarding flexibility. I remember sitting there, alone in the server room, looking at the audit trail. I had 2 choices: expose the CEO's son or fix it before anyone asked too many questions. I chose the second. I stayed overnight, rebuilt the sandbox from a backup, redirected client logins through a legacy failover system I'd designed years ago but never deployed. By 6 a.m., everything was stable again. Jonathan never asked how we recovered so fast. Liam? He sent me an email the next Monday. Thanks for covering. I owe you one. That was it. Not even a signature. I never cashed in that one, but I never forgot it either. That night taught me something important. Not all mistakes need a spotlight. But some just need to be remembered. Quietly, patiently, until the time is right. And as Liam sat in the CEO's chair years later, making decisions with the same reckless confidence that nearly crashed our systems back then, I realized he hadn't changed. He just had more power to break bigger things, and this time, if he messed with the wrong piece of the machine, well, let's just say I had built a few safety nets since then, just in case history decided to repeat itself. It happened at exactly 4:03 p.m. on a Thursday. I know the time because I still have the calendar invite. Subject line, Quick Sync, Claire and Liam. No agenda, no context. Just a meeting dropped into my afternoon like a trap door. I walked to his office, notebook in hand, just in case it was about the infrastructure updates we'd been delaying. Maybe a reorg, maybe something about the budget cuts and DevOps. But as soon as I opened the door, I knew. Liam was standing, arms crossed, leaning casually against the edge of his desk. He wasn't alone. 2 members of HR were already seated. The air was too still. The way no one made eye contact said more than words ever could. He didn't ask me to sit. Claire, he started, with that practiced, hollow tone people use when the think-sounding professional makes what they're doing okay. We've been reviewing performance metrics across departments. My stomach tightened. I waited. And, based on current needs and future vision alignment, we've decided to move in a different direction. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it, like reading from a cue card he barely glanced at. I blinked once. I don't understand. My team just hit 99.98% uptime last quarter. He shrugged. Doesn't really matter anymore. We're streamlining legacy operations. I looked at the HR rep beside him. Her face was pale. She didn't even open the folder on her lap. And then Liam said it. To be honest, Claire, your roles become kind of irrelevant. My ears rang. I had given this company everything. My time, my nights, my sanity. I'd missed birthdays, anniversaries, and entire vacations rebooting systems no one else understood. And this boy, this half-baked executive who once took down our authentication servers by accident, had the gall to call me irrelevant? He wasn't done. I mean, you're good at what you do, or were. But let's be real. Tech's changed. We need younger minds, faster execution, not people stuck in old frameworks. Old frameworks? I wasn't even 45. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught somewhere between disbelief and fury. And then he delivered the final blow. We're terminating your position effective immediately. No severance. No severance. 17 years. Not even a handshake. He gestured to the HR rep. They'll walk you through your offboarding. You'll need to return your badge before you leave. Just like that. I stood there for a full 10 seconds, silent, completely still. I could feel eyes from outside the glass office walls, people pretending not to watch but watching anyway. A few heads quickly turned back to their screens when I looked up. Malik from engineering had frozen mid-step in the hallway. His eyes locked with mine, full of quiet disbelief. And me? I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I nodded once. Tight, mechanical. Then I placed my badge on Liam's desk, looked him dead in the eye, and said only one thing. You should have read the contract. I turned and walked out. Not with anger, but with precision. Because in that moment, Liam thought he had erased me from the company. What he didn't realize was, he had just triggered the one clause that would erase his control entirely. I didn't go home right away. After I walked out of that office, after I dropped my badge like a silent threat, I didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't even text anyone. I drove straight to a coffee shop 2 blocks down from Halcyon, the one with unreliable Wi-Fi and chipped ceramic mugs that never matched. I ordered chamomile tea, not because I wanted to relax, but because I needed something warm to keep my hands from shaking. I pulled out my old personal laptop, dusty, dented, and slow, but it still had one thing I needed, a PDF copy of my original executive contract. I hadn't looked at it in years. Most people don't. Once you've been somewhere long enough, the paperwork becomes background noise, just fine print gathering digital dust. But not mine. Because mine had something buried in the middle of Section 14.3, right under Emergency System Governance. It was a clause Jonathan Chase had written himself. Back then, he called it a mutual safety valve. We'd just come out of a ransomware scare, something that nearly cost us our federal contracts. I had stayed up 72 hours straight, rebuilding a secure recovery system. When the crisis passed, Jonathan called me into his office, handed me a glass of water, and said, "Claire, I trust you more than anyone in this building. If I'm ever gone, and something goes wrong, really wrong, I want you to have the final say." We drafted a clause together. It stated that in the event of a wrongful or non-consensual termination, I could trigger an emergency lockdown of core infrastructure, not to destroy data, but to suspend all access until legal review. It had checks. It wasn't absolute power. I couldn't delete anything. I couldn't hold the company hostage. But I could press pause. I could force the system to breathe, even when its leaders refused to. I remember pushing back when we finalized it. "This is overkill," I told Jonathan. "No," he said. "This is a parachute. For you, and for Halcyon. For years I never used it. Not when budgets were slashed. Not when new CTOs tried to push me aside. Not even when one VP tried to take credit for my architecture model in a board presentation. I kept it in my back pocket. Because I believed in the mission. I believed in the company Jonathan built. But Liam? Liam wasn't the mission. He was the glitch. And now, for the first time in 17 years, I had been terminated without cause, without warning, without severance. All three conditions, explicitly listed in that clause, had just been violated. I stared at the contract for a long time. Then I took a slow sip of tea, opened a secure connection, and began preparing the emergency protocol. No one knew it existed. Not legal, not HR, and definitely not Liam, because he thought contracts were boilerplate. But mine? Mine was a time bomb, wired for justice, and someone had just lit the fuse. I waited until sunrise, not because the protocol required it, but because I wanted the company to start its day like any other. I wanted them to feel normal for just a moment, before everything changed. At 7:12 a.m., I logged into my remote admin console through a secure, offline client I'd designed years ago, something Jonathan and I once called the Ark. A fail-safe buried beneath layers of standard infrastructure, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. I entered my credentials, then the override key, then the passphrase, which I hadn't spoken aloud in over a decade. We don't just build systems, we protect them. And with one final click, I executed the protocol. Not a nuke, not a virus, just a pause. Across Halcyon systems, one by one, everything went still. The finance department was first. Payroll access denied. Vendor payments stalled mid-transfer. Then HR. Employee databases grayed out. No one could submit PTO, update benefits, or even see their own records. The sales team tried logging into the CRM. They were met with a screen that simply said, Administrative Lockout, Protocol 14.3, active. Marketing? All outbound email systems routed into dead ends. Scheduled posts vanished. No access to brand assets, even the Wi-Fi reset to limited mode. Someone in legal tried to access our contract archive. Denied. And IT? Well, they were helpless. Because I was IT. Phones started ringing. Slack exploded with confused messages. Help desk tickets flooded in. Is this maintenance? Did we get hacked? Why is everything down? By 8:03 a.m., Liam had arrived. Iced coffee in hand, sunglasses still on. He barely sat down before his phone buzzed. Then again, and again. The VP of Ops knocked on his door. From the cameras still accessible through my legacy node, I could see it happen in real time. Liam's confusion, then panic, then anger. He paced, pointed fingers, demanded explanations. Someone suggested a server breach. Another floated the idea of ransomware. Liam slammed a folder on the desk and yelled, "Someone needs to fix this!" But no one could, because no one had access anymore. I hadn't erased a single byte of data. That would be illegal. I hadn't shut down power or broken systems. I had simply invoked a contractually authorized pause, a digital red light, until someone answered for what had been done. By 10:17 a.m., my phone started ringing. HR, ignored. Ops, ignored. Liam. I let it buzz 5 times. Then I picked up. Claire, what the hell did you do? His voice cracked between fury and fear. You breached the system. This is criminal. I let him rant for a few seconds, then calmly replied, No breach, no deletion, just compliance. Compliance? Section 14.3, Liam, the clause you didn't bother reading. Silence. This is insane, he finally muttered. No, Liam. What's insane is firing someone who built your foundation. Without cause, without severance, and without even checking what they were still legally entitled to. He didn't respond. I could hear the weight of it landing, the realization. I had played by the rules, the ones his father wrote, and now? The systems would stay locked, until someone in charge remembered who had actually kept them running all these years. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. When you hold the master key, you don't bang on doors. You wait for them to knock. And knock they did. Liam called again at noon, then 3 times before 3 p.m. By 4:30, he switched to emails, each one more frantic than the last. You're holding the company hostage. We can sue you for this. Let's be adults and resolve this professionally. Irony, really, coming from the man who told me I was irrelevant less than 24 hours ago. By 6 p.m., I received a formal message from Halcyon's legal team, a request for a virtual meeting with executive staff and board representatives. I agreed, not because I owed them anything, but because it was time. The next morning, I logged into a video call with 8 familiar faces, some of whom I hadn't seen in months. The boardroom looked tense, papers shuffled, eyes avoided the camera. And then, Liam appeared. Tie loose, hair slightly unkempt, jaw clenched. He didn't speak. Instead, Diane Rutherford, chair of the board, led the conversation. Claire, let's get right to it. Are the systems down because of you? They're locked, I replied evenly. Not destroyed, not corrupted, just paused. Under what authority? Section 14.3 of my executive contract, signed by Jonathan Chase. I watched as Diane skimmed her papers. She looked up. And this clause allows you to restrict access if terminated improperly, if terminated without cause, without severance, or without formal notice. All 3 conditions were met. Liam shifted in his chair. I didn't look at him. Diane continued, voice steady. Were you offered any severance? No, I was called into an unscheduled meeting, told I was irrelevant, terminated on the spot. Silence. One board member cleared his throat awkwardly. Another rubbed his temple. Finally, Diane turned to Liam. Is that true? He hesitated, shrugged. I didn't think she'd actually activate anything. I assumed the contract was outdated. I raised my eyebrows. It wasn't. Another pause. Then Diane asked the question they were all tiptoeing around. What would it take to restore access? I leaned forward slightly, not to threaten, but to be heard. 3 things, I said. First, a full retraction of my termination, on paper, signed, dated. Second, an official acknowledgement from Halcyon that my termination breached contractual terms. Third, a public apology from Liam Chase for his conduct, for his words, and for compromising operational integrity. Liam scoffed. You're joking! I looked him dead in the eyes. You called me worthless, Liam. You erased 17 years of service with a sentence. You embarrassed me in front of my peers. You disregarded the architecture I built, and you thought pressing delete would be the end of it. He said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Diane nodded slowly. We'll take your conditions under advisement. I closed my laptop. Then I exhaled, not from triumph, but from release. For the first time in days, I stepped outside and let the sun touch my face. There was still chaos behind those corporate walls, but in me, there was clarity. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. And if they wanted their kingdom back, they'd have to earn it. The call came 2 days later. Unknown number, no caller ID, just a soft buzz on my kitchen counter while I was folding laundry. mundane, grounding, the kind of task that reminded me I was still human beneath the architecture. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me slide my thumb across the screen. Claire Morgan? The voice was slower, older, gravel-worn but unmistakable. This is Jonathan Chase. I froze. It had been almost a year since I last heard from him, since he quietly stepped away from Halcyon, citing health concerns and a need to refocus. But now he was here, calling me. Hi, Jonathan. I wasn't expecting. I know, he interrupted gently. I should have called sooner. I've been watching from a distance. Not proud of that. There was silence on the line, the kind that says more than it hides. He cleared his throat. Diane briefed me. I've read everything. The clause, the board minutes, Liam's behavior. His voice faltered just slightly. I want you to know, he said carefully. I still stand by that agreement, the clause. Everything we wrote together. You earned that trust, and I see now how necessary it was. My chest tightened. For years, I didn't need his validation. I didn't ask for it. But hearing it now, it mattered more than I expected. Thank you, Jonathan, I said quietly. Claire, he continued, I'm not calling to defend my son. I know what he did, and I'm not asking you to forgive him. I waited. I'm asking if you'd consider helping us fix this. Not for him, not even for me, but for the people who still rely on Halcyon. I sat down slowly, letting the weight of his words settle. He called me worthless, Jonathan. In front of HR, in front of staff. No notice, no severance. I know. If I come back, if I lift this lock, it has to mean something. It can't be just another reset. Agreed. There was a rustle, papers shifting. Then I heard the clink of porcelain against a saucer, Jonathan's trademark chamomile, I guessed. That's why I'm sending over a document, he said. Take a look. It's not a contract. It's a proposal. Proposal for what? Not to run the company, he said, almost smiling, but to help choose who should. That stopped me. You want me on the selection committee? I want you to help design the leadership infrastructure, audit the systems, mentor the next CTO. I didn't answer right away, because deep down, a part of me had already begun to let go. I had tasted peace, freedom, silence not filled with Slack pings and server alerts. But I also knew this wasn't about me anymore. This was about legacy, about making sure no one like Liam ever sat in that chair again. That night I lit a candle, opened Jonathan's document, and read it from start to finish. It was sound, transparent, collaborative. For the first time since the day I was fired, I felt still. I hadn't won, but I hadn't lost either. I had something more valuable than revenge. I had the power to rebuild. I returned to Halcyon not as a disgraced employee or a ghost from the past, but as a bridge between what had been broken and what still had a chance to heal. The board met me at the main entrance. No cameras, no press, just quiet nods, cautious relief, and, from Diane, a simple sentence. Welcome back, Claire. I didn't smile. I wasn't here for pleasantries. I was here to close the loop. The moment I sat down at my old terminal, my fingers moved without hesitation. I entered the system through the back-end shell, bypassed the forced locks, and manually restored each node. No automation, no script. This was personal. One by one, access permissions came back online. Finance, HR, contracts, infrastructure. By 11:47 a.m., Halcyon Systems took its first full breath in 5 days. Emails flowed, transactions cleared. Monitors blinked green. The lights were back on. But this time, I wasn't staying. That same afternoon, I gathered a small team in the war room. 6 engineers, 2 project managers, and 1 systems intern named Zoe. Young, sharp, questions always in her eyes. They weren't just talented, they listened. This system isn't just code, I told them. It's trust, it's discipline, It's knowing when not to change something just because you can. We worked together for 4 days. I handed off credentials, created documentation no one had ever asked me to write before, explained not just what things did, but why they were built that way, what each decision protected, what failure might look like if they didn't respect the chain. It wasn't easy. Letting go rarely is. But I wasn't just leaving. I was passing the torch. When we finished our last handover session, I stood for a moment and looked around the room, not at the machines, but at them. These new minds, this next guard. They were ready. And so was I. Before leaving, I took one final walk through the building. No badge, no floor map, just memory guiding me. The break room where I once debugged code on a napkin. The hallway where Malik and I high-fived after a 72-hour migration. The elevator where I once cried silently after losing a colleague to burnout. I stopped by every department, not for status updates, but for something much simpler. "Thank you," I said to some. "I see you," I said to others. Most replied with stunned gratitude. A few just nodded, eyes misty. Near the elevator, Zoe caught up to me. "Claire," she said, a little breathless, "I'm going to take care of it, of everything you built." "Don't take care of the code," I said. "Take care of the people who depend on it." She hugged me, unexpected, but not unwelcome. Then I stepped into the elevator, pressed the lobby button, and watched the doors close for the last time. I wasn't sad, I wasn't angry, I was whole, because I had been the firewall once. Now it was time to stop absorbing damage and let something new begin. 2 months passed. No headlines, no scandal, just silence. Liam Chase disappeared from the company without a press release. No farewell email, no new LinkedIn update. His office was quietly cleared one weekend by an assistant who refused to meet anyone's eyes. Rumor had it he'd flown to Europe, or maybe joined a friend's startup in Miami. No one really cared, because by then, Halcyon had moved on. And so had I. I didn't post a triumphant update on social media. I didn't tell the world what happened. I didn't need to. There's a difference between winning and being right. And sometimes, being right is enough. I went back to my small life. Morning tea, long walks, a stack of paperbacks I had promised myself for years I'd read when things calmed down. And for the first time in 17 years, things had finally calmed down. The company was stable, the systems secure. The new team was thriving, asking questions I'd once been too afraid to ask out loud. Every now and then, a former colleague would reach out. Not to gossip, but to say thank you. One message stuck with me. "You didn't just hold the line, Claire. You reminded us that some lines shouldn't be crossed." I saved that one, not because I needed validation, but because it told me I hadn't just reacted to injustice. I had drawn a boundary and made the world pause long enough to see it. As for Liam, he never apologized, not in a letter, not in a voicemail, not even through a second-hand word. But I didn't need him to. Because people like Liam, they don't implode with a bang. They unravel in whispers, not with scandal, but with irrelevance. He thought power came with a last name, but power isn't inherited. Respect is earned. And when the dust settles, when the servers reboot, the offices refill, and the systems start breathing again, it's not the loudest name that matters. It's the quiet one, the name people still remember when everything else breaks. The one who stayed, the one who knew, the one who built the firewall.